China today is at the end of this incredible 35-year period of very high-speed growth. Sometimes people call it miracle growth. And during that period, so much change took place. There were periods when 10 million people left the countryside every year and came to the city, and a high-speed rail system has been built. This massive period of change has taken place, and now it's over. And so as policymakers grapple with the fact that they're no longer going to be able to get economic growth from massively moving new workers into cities, creating new factories, expanding exports, they're looking for different ways to keep the growth rate high. And of course the solution that they've come up with is that China has to move rapidly into being a high-tech economy. And so they're pushing very, very hard to make China a high-tech economy. Some of the ways they're pushing, I think, will not be as successful as they hope. But on the other hand, they're also doing lots of things right. One of the amazing things they've done is increase the intake for urban high school graduates into college to a level actually above our societies, above that in the United States, above that in Germany. About 2/3 of urban high school leavers are going into college. And so they're creating the basis for a sustained upgrading of their economy. I think there's no question that China will become one of the important leading and high-tech economies in the world. But the question is, are these government policies really contributing to that process in a way that's commensurate with what they're costing? Because the government is spending sums of money on these that are really kind of stupefying. They're spending $100 billion on semiconductor development. Well, that's incredible. In fact, if you take the amount of money they're putting into semiconductor funds and divide it by the Chinese population, that's $50 for every man, woman, and child in China is going into the semiconductor industry. And China's still a poor country. Well, maybe it's not fair to say it's a poor country, but it's certainly a middle-income country with lots of people in the countryside making several $100s a year. So for them to be contributing $50 to the semiconductor industry, to me seems a little bit of a misguided priority. It depends what the cost is. I mean, I would agree with that if we are saying that the cost is 1 or 2% of GDP. But if it turns out you're spending 10 or 20% of GDP, then it becomes a very different issue. I think we don't know for sure what the figure is. Is it 1% or is it 10%? And I think actually they don't know either. And so one of the things that I worry about is that the basic method is to throw every possible policy lever and every possible pool of resources that you have into this high-tech development. And I think actually they get there better with a somewhat slower approach. Economic reform is something I try to follow closely, as closely as I can. And I think I agree with the consensus that economic reform has been disappointing since about 2014. That's not to say there hasn't been any, but compared to the high expectations we had when this important party meeting in 2013, the third plenum, laid out a very bold, very ambitious reform program, what we've seen is the political leadership, when it runs into difficulties with reform, it stops and even pulls back a little. And of course this is a surprise to us because the leadership seems very bold and willing to move ahead decisively in many other areas, but not in economic reform. So when there were problems in the stock market, they pulled back, and not much has happened since then. There are problems with the fiscal system. They slowed down. So this is a great puzzle. We don't really understand it. And one of the big questions is, after this important party meeting in, let's say, October of this year, will there be a relaunch of the economic reform process? And we don't know. There are some people who accept it sort of as a matter of faith. They think a strong leadership is better and is capable of doing this. I'm not convinced yet. I don't think we've seen the kind of personal buy-in and personal commitment from the First Party Secretary Xi Jinping that we would need to see in order to be really confident for that kind of a judgment.